institution, or is it going to be ongoing?
No, it's falling apart, like I said, but it needs the help of all of us to do that. We have to pull these misguided and possessed people who belong to this cult out. And once that starts happening, it starts a chain reaction. You can do that in your own community. Write to us, get our material, hand it to people going into the churches. Say, do not put money in the collection plate, because you're committing a crime when you do that, for one thing. What we find when you do that, it takes even just one person doing that, sends shockwaves through the local church. They call the police, they get all panicky. They alienate their own people in the pews by acting totally paranoid about this one person standing out handing a flyer. So you create a tsunami just by taking the one action. You start creating a tsunami, and all these tsunamis all over the world are joining up now. But it starts where you are. And so you have to answer your own question. You say, okay, how am I going to stop it in my community? And believe me, I travel around, I see the impact this is having. I see church attendance falling off. This stuff in the news about, what happens to children at the hands of the church. Do you think any of that would be there if we hadn't have started this work in 1995? The whole genocide in Canada thing was brought up by a few of us. You have a tremendous impact, but you have to move from the static situation in your own personal life to acting, and then you start changing. You change. I like that quote from Sam Adams in the American Revolution. Somebody said, how did you make the revolution? He said, we didn't. The revolution made us. So as you take a step, you start getting changed by it, and you get stronger and more clear, and then you know what to do next. You can't just sit there and have a blueprint and say, well, okay, let's do this, or you do this for me, right? That's not the way things change, right?
So Annie has asked, I imagine that Kevin also has knowledge of how the church sacrileged sacred indigenous land grounds. Will they be held accountable legally?
No, they own the legal system. They're never going to be held. And the term accountable is a word put out there to keep everybody on the hook, to make it think, oh, these people are going to be brought to justice one day. Well, can you show me an example of that ever happening in their system? Never. It only happens when other people light a fire. And the whole purpose of the church going on to indigenous lands was to commit sacrilege. It was to violate that primary energy from nature, which is that all are equal, male and female are equal. We're one embodiment of the Creator. We're to share the land in peace. That's why we set up the Republic of Canada. We reached out to the traditional indigenous people and said, we're going to create a new arrangement now, outside Crown and Vatican jurisdiction altogether. And then you just read murderbydecree.com, you'll see how they went about doing that, because indigenous people were closer to the original understanding. The people who were harmed the most in these death camps they call residential schools were the children whose parents were spiritual elders. They had the sacred knowledge. They targeted people with the sacred knowledge, because then you end up drunk on the street and your culture falls apart when you lose the bond, from the sacred tradition. So anyway, hope that answered some of your question. But write to me. We can talk more.
A few people have asked how they can contact you. What's your preferred method?
angelfire101@protonmail.com. I don't want to give my phone number because it'll get whacked, but I'll give you a backup email, hiddenfromhistory1@gmail.com, and through Shaun.
So Zachary, what does Kevin know about the mark of Cain in regards to the papal court?
Papal court, what curia means court in Latin. That's what the College of Cardinals call themselves. And to be a legitimate sovereign body, you need to be a court. And that's why they take that imaginary name for themselves. So by that, you mean the College of Cardinals, the mark of Cain. Yeah, they stand by the Orthodox teaching that all of us were marked by Cain, by his murder of his brother Abel. You're born damned, in other words. That's the ideology they need to implant on you to keep you ashamed and frightened and dependent on priests and putting money in the plate on Sunday.
Is the Vatican now compromised by US influence in an attempt to prolong US hegemony?
No, it's more like the other way around. All financial roads lead to Rome. That's why all the presidents go over there and pay homage. But the impression they created about this guy, Robert Prevost, is that, oh, he's an American, so America now has more influence. No, he's in among the College of Cardinals, he was called the second Latin American Pope after Bergoglio, because he did all his work there. All of his nefarious activities really started in Peru, Argentina, a strong link with Bergoglio and stuff we've talked about that he did there. So yeah, I think it's more like, Vatican running things.
What is the CCP connection?
Well, we did talk about this. The only country in the world where the government gets to appoint Catholic bishops and cardinals is China. And they actually have a joint committee with the church where it's like a joint church-state operation. With what's called the Chinese Communist Party. It's like the name of their government. So I mean, we've talked about this, but that's kind of the general situation.
Lisa is curious whether the big-name Catholic apologists are paid to push false Catholic doctrines.
Not just paid, but I mean, there's an arrangement now with, I know this, having been a Protestant minister, when I started criticizing the World Council of Churches, which is the Protestant, it's kind of like the International Federation of Protestant Churches in the world, a lot of them. And they were pro-Vatican, openly. They've renounced the traditional policy of Protestant churches to call the Church of Rome Antichrist. That's done away with. They believe in ecumenism, which is all the churches getting together under the authority of Rome. They achieved that in England in 2010 at the Holyrood Agreement, when Queen Elizabeth violated her coronation oath and arranged to bring the Church of England back into the Church of Rome. So yeah, it's a whole convergence. Like I say, that's why people got to get out of this and move away in the other direction, on every level.
Why did Vatican finance solidarity movement in Poland in the 80s? That was what, Lech Wałęsa?
Yep, and Karol Wojtyła, the guy who you saw in the picture there, John Paul II, involved in these Ninth Circle activities. Number of reasons. The Reagan in the White House, his whole policy had kind of an anti-communist revival and a new revived arms race. If you remember back in the 80s, everyone was paranoid about being nuked. Maggie Thatcher and him reviving the whole 50s kind of mentality. And they needed the Catholic Church on board. The CIA was funding the solidarity movement through the Vatican Bank. And we talked about this last time. Pope John Paul II said, fine, but our condition is that you will now diplomatically recognize the Vatican, because America hadn't before 1982, And so thanks to Ronald Reagan, America moved into the Vatican camp, and it was a Cold War politics, but it was Vatican's axe to grind was that they were benefiting from it too by getting America into the loop.
All right, next question is from Tracy. What were you going to tell us last time about the Catholic Church hiding the fact that Jesus went to Japan, China, I think?
I don't quite remember that.
I don't remember that either.
Do you? I know I mentioned about Jesus going to India, which is further well documented. The Gnostics believe that. The Gnostic teachings had a lot of kind of Persian and Manichaean and Eastern dualism in their yin-yang kind of belief, but I don't remember about Japan.
So Sword wants to know, I see there was a guilty verdict rendered in 2013. Were any assets seized or defendants jailed? At
a local level. Based on that, the Catholic churches in Canada and the US were occupied and taken over by Native people on the ground, and their assets were seized. There was attempts to arrest Bergoglio, and on 2 occasions that almost worked. We almost got him in Geneva. But I mean, again, the only way to answer that question is to think, okay, how are we going to do it on our community? This is a ground up process. You seize the assets in your local community. The Indigenous people who are affiliated with our republic in Canada, the Squamish, Chilcotin, Cree, and Anishinaabe, have all declared Catholic assets forfeited. So they have the right to go in and seize the money out of the collection plates under international law, under their own land law jurisdiction, take the buildings back, and arrest any Catholic priest because they're all part of this criminal conspiracy. So yeah, it happened, but locally, and it only happens in a bigger way if we get more people on board. This is a long process. It doesn't happen overnight.
Is the Vatican the largest bank in the world?
Yes.
Do you have an estimate on the assets?
It's in the trillions. We talked again about this last time, which you can go to the third show and look at that in more detail. But about 3/4 to 85% of the assets, all the bank deposits, channel into the Vatican Bank. So you figure it out, plus all the financial concordats taking your taxpayers' money into the Vatican Bank, all their corporate investments. It's enormous.
What do you think of the views of Father Malachi Martin, especially on the third secret of Fatima?
Call no one father but God in heaven, because he is the one father of us all. That's why I don't call anyone father. Just a little point there. I read some of Malachi's stuff. I don't really understand the third secret of Fatima. So, somebody in that will have to explain it to me, but I didn't really study that too much.
Do you expect to see results from the ICC when the Bible says Babylon will be destroyed by the stone made without human hands in Daniel?
Again, it's not ICC. That's the Corporate International Criminal Court. It's the ICLCJ. That's our common law court. Well, that's a bigger question. I mean, that has to do with what's the motive force here? Is it God or us or both? And I think it's both. The divine will operating through us to bring about justice and to save the lives of children here on Mother Earth. Let's not let religious dogma get in the way of doing that. Okay.
Okay. Is this part of the reveal of the white hats?
I've never met a white hat. I just keep hearing about them all the time, right? And it's funny to use the word hat, where these ideas come from. If somebody could trace who started this idea, white hat, black hat, the term "he wears different hats" refers to one guy putting on different costumes. So you might think about that. I don't think there's an elite group of people who have suddenly developed a conscience and are going to now save humanity. First of all, it allows us to sit back and let somebody else do it for us, which is always a fatal belief. And anyway, let's say a new group gets in, then they become the black hats. I mean, don't you learn anything from history? If we're ever going to change that, it means we got to forget about saviors and people doing it for us, and we've got to do it ourselves where we live and work. And that's what we keep coming back to all the time.
Does the Vatican control the John Birch Society?
I don't know. I'll have to look into that. Although, I think their money and tendrils extend everywhere, frankly, so it wouldn't surprise me. But I don't have specific info on that.
What about saying the Vatican had proof Jesus didn't die?
Yeah, that was from that archaeological dig we talked about that they commissioned in Cyprus in 1958, I believe, where they found archaeological evidence of the man Jesus and Mary going to the south of France to have their children, more than one. There wasn't just one bloodline of Jesus, according to that, despite what you see in the Da Vinci Code. Who knows? I mean, again, it's in the secret Vatican archives, and you'd have to get into that. Hopefully, in the course of the court's work, since we've already accessed one aspect of those secret archives about this log for the Ninth Circle. Hopefully, other things will open up. When you have a universal court order allowing you to go in there, then that's when you'll see it. And frankly, if we have the numbers, that's exactly what we're going to do in Rome. We're going to go in.
Are Catholic and Protestants the same network, same money network?
Yeah, they're all corporatized. I'm talking the mainstream churches. I'm not talking about some little church down the road operating by itself. There are a lot of those around. But I mean, those are those churches that have protected status they call it 501c3 in America, income tax exemption. That's how all the churches are controlled. And they're trustees of the state that was set up in Rome in 317. That's what the Roman Catholic Church is, the first corporation of the world. And so all of those tied into the state, yes, they're all part of the same problem.
What can Kevin say about Mormon and Catholic partnership? Can we hope the Mormon leaders lose power instead of growing?
Shaun, we got to do a whole show on the Mormon Catholic connection, because this is something I stumbled over a few years ago. I was invited to Salt Lake City, and we had to meet somewhere else, too dangerous. But the Catholics and the Mormons are like that. financially. If you remember a few years ago, Bergoglio invited the whole Mormon leadership to open a Mormon cathedral in downtown Rome. Very weird, because the doctrine of each condemns the other, saying they're pagan cults, and yet there they are sitting down together. Well, there have been lawyers in America who've looked into this. The Mormon church has enormous assets. It's probably the richest church after the Church of Rome. And the FBI and CIA recruit inordinately out of the Mormon church, because I know this, I had a grandmother who was a non-practicing Mormon, and her grandfather was one of the heads of John Dunning. He was the, no, that's my other-in-law, wait a minute, John Golding. He was one of the early bishops in Salt Lake City. So we have this within the family, a lot of these stories. The Mormon cult was like an early kind of social engineering project in mind control. And a lot of the early MK Ultra experiments were happening in Mormon churches and hospitals. Mind control experiments. The FBI and CIA recruit a lot of their agents as Mormons. And you notice they're all blonde-haired, blue-eyed, smiling, kind of Aryan types. The stories of these survivors who we have documented is unbelievable. It sounds like Ninth Circle, even worse, that go on in the catacombs beneath Salt Lake City. There's a tunnel system linking the main Catholic cathedral, which is just down the road from the temple, the Mormon temple. I can send you the links on my old radio show, Here We Stand, with the interviews of some of these Mormon survivors. So anyway, that we can only scratch the surface of that, but it's a whole topic in itself.
Yeah, and viewers, I've got a survivor of mind control coming on, MK Ultra related, called Anna Lee. We've done a pre-record, and that should be out in about a week. And we've got the Epstein survivor, Juliet Bryant, that podcast coming out on Monday at 9 a.m. UK. All right, so in terms of doing a whole show on the Vatican and the Mormon faith, is that going to be our subject? Do you fancy doing that next Saturday, Kevin?
I'm doing some traveling. 2 weeks from now would be better, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it would give me time to talk to these witnesses and bone up a bit. It's been a few years since I was into that, but definitely, let's do it in 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay. Arthur wants to know, and viewers, would you like to see that? A whole show on the Mormon and the Vatican? Put a 1 in the chat. If you don't want to see that, put a 2. Arthur, what about Hebrew Grammatica saying Leo is bait and switch for the name of Peter the Roman, the forbidden name for a pope?
I don't know. I'm not quite sure I understand the question, and so sorry.
Because I learned so much from you, Kevin. When I read these questions, some of them are over my head, and I don't understand that one. Okay.
I don't either.
Will the International Court allow access to the documents hidden in the Vatican?
In our common law court, all records are public. There's the only time we've held secret closed sessions is when the lives of judges and eyewitnesses and the court prosecutor have been threatened. Everything that is entered as evidence will be made public. Yes.
What is your favorite Bible quote to give us all hope?
Well, there's a few of them. That which you do to the least of my children, you do to me. That always hit home. That which you refuse to do for the least of my children, you refuse to do to me. Matthew 25. There's a lot of great stuff in the Psalms, in the Isaiah and Jeremiah, about God demanding justice. You caught me off guard there, but actually, I should show you. I do carry this around with me, my Geneva Bible. This is the one that got William Tyndale burned at the stake because he dared to translate from the Hebrew and the Greek directly into English. But there's plug my family a bit. There's my ancestor, Philip Annett, who took part in the rebellion in Canada in 1837. And he's got his hand resting on his Bible there. He's an old Baptist. And they had to leave. Us Annetts are always getting chased out of country. So we were, as a side point, we found our name Ornati. We were Italians in northern Italy around Milan in the 1500s. Then we end up in France, and I figured, okay, we were probably these Waldensian early Protestants. In France, we become Huguenot Protestants. We hold on to our faith. We get burned out of there in 1572, come to England, thanks to good Queen Bess. And then we have to leave in the 1800s because we're Baptists. And in England, you could only be an Anglican. Anglicans were the only preachers allowed. You were licensed. And if you weren't an Anglican, you couldn't preach there. You get hung or thrown in jail. So we came to Upper Canada because my great-great-great-great-grandfather was a serving officer. He had fought in the Battle of Waterloo, Robert Annett, and he got free land in Ontario on Native people's land. And then his son takes part in the rebellion against the crown, which I thought was delightful. But so anyway, I don't know how I got around to that, but the Bible, yes. Psalm 127:1, is that the one? If God doesn't build a foundation, you build on sand, something like that. I don't know. I've got a lot. There's too many. Just we'll talk. Maybe we'll do a show on that sometime. What do you think, Shaun?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Monica, are you saying they will prove Carol W. took part in this?
Yes, and from the eyewitnesses, the references in this material from the Vatican archives, and hopefully forensic evidence. We do know the sites of some, as we showed on this clip we have of Tos Nienhuis in Belgium, showing where children were sacrificed in a field. And we want to do that forensic research. So we have all the ingredients you need in a court of law to get a verdict. Eyewitnesses backed up by documentation and forensic evidence, all three of them. The question isn't that he will be found guilty. The question is, who will then enforce it? Who will bell the cat, right? When all the systems of the world work to defend that criminal institution. So that's the bigger question we have to grapple with. But like I say, it's like the more local you look at something, the more possible things become. The bigger you look globally, the more impossible it seems, right?
Have you already covered why they chose Crypt U?
No, I don't know entirely. It's just referring to as the Crypt of Lucifer. But again, we're learning as we go on this, right?
How many more are being harbored by the Vatican?
How many more what?
Kids, disappeared kids.
It's a global network. They're one of the major human traffickers in the world. I mean, so you tell me. I mean, it's a large number, and even more than important than the number is the fact it's probably happening right in your own neighborhood. And the people protecting the system are social workers, judges, police. It's like how popes are chosen. You're part of a protected, safe group. Okay, we can rely on these people. And then all the honest cops are shut out over here, and they're told they're going to die, like that Ottawa policeman, Kel Gadban, if you cross over the line and help these people trying to expose the crime. So, it's hard to give a number. It's like, how much money do they owe?
I just watched a guy talking about these networks, and he said that the United Nations and these aid agencies are running even bigger than the Vatican. Do you believe that's the case?
Well, it's not either or. They're all part of the same network. There's no such thing as religious secular. Okay, that's for the masses, like political parties and ideologies and all that. I mean, it's all about power, and they're all in the same club. They just wear different hats, black hat, white hat.
What do we need to do in order to be proactive?
Like I say, take action where you are. I always say to people, don't talk about it. You get 10 people in a room talking, you'll have 10 reasons not to act and 10 different opinions. Basis of unity is taking action. So the way this all started for me, we went down, got some natives together, stood outside a Catholic church with signs. They start yelling at us. We get press coverage. People attack us. Then eyewitnesses hear about it and come forward and tell us more. Then we take it to another level. You have to have the long-term view. You have to commit yourself to this for your life, because it isn't just about children. It's about the future of all of us, our minds and our souls. And start where you are. We have a whole way you go about that. We have organizing schools. We hold classes on preparing how to do this work and join up with our international network. So again, write to me and we'll plug you in.
Artsy wants to know whether the Jehovah's Witnesses are also part of the network.
I don't know. I've never heard of any, but doesn't mean they're not.
And Monica wants to know where she can get more information about this topic, and that would be through your links that are in the description box, isn't it, Kevin?
Yep, basically, or write to me.
Why were the 3 candidates chosen by Pope Francis, yet Leo was chosen in the end? Is this to do with the cult you mentioned?
I already answered that. Maybe you didn't hear that part, but there's a list, call it a red list. And this guy was in on the ceremonies in 1978 when he was an ordained priest. The month he got ordained, he was in. So he went on the red list. He's a safe candidate to be the Pope. So it's arranged beforehand. It's like a presidential election. It's arranged. It's a selection, not an election, okay, from a safe group of people that are already controlled. I mean, that's what people have to wake up to. You know, these terms that we've been raised with don't exist, like pre-elections, all that.
Yeah, and Kevin answered about the risks to his life earlier on as well. Ray J, is there a way out, or is this never-ending cycle?
I don't know. It could be a never-ending cycle, but it doesn't mean we have to go along with it. And that's, you know, I talked about passing through that veil of fear. Especially when you're younger, you think your life is going to go on forever, and you've got all these plans. You're going to have a nice home and wonderful relationship and a meaningful career, and you're going to, you know, all this stuff. And then when all of that is blown away, as it was with me, you realize, well, what is life anyway? It's what you do in this given moment, and whether you're on the right side or the wrong side when it comes to the harm and injustice done to people. And if you act on that every day, it gives you a meaning, and you don't worry about yourself anymore. I am not afraid because there's nothing ultimately to be afraid of. It's an illusion. It's like when I was outside the Vatican in Rome, illusion. That's what the word idol in Hebrew means, I-D-O-L. It means nothing in Hebrew. Think about that.
Am I okay to give out your Hidden from History email?
Yeah, sure. Please.
All right, I'm putting that in the live chat now, folks, because some people have said they've tried to email you and it's bounced back. They don't think they've spelt it right. And then Roseanne, what does Kevin think about the connection between Hollywood and the Vatican?
Well, again, Hollywood is and was created as one of the major, you know, mind control technique institutions. Walt Disney and that, consultant with MK Ultra. I guess you know about Walt Disney, right? Or when it comes to MK Ultra. Have you talked about that at all? But yeah, you create, it's all about living vicariously. And vicariously means you live through somebody else. You know, people watching movies and they say, oh, Robert De Niro, I love him. And I say, what do you mean you love him? You've never met him. You don't know what he's like, right? But you project your personality onto these imaginary figures, leaders, and who better than a movie star? Everyone just wants to be them. And what better way to keep slaves in line, right? So if you want to say the connection between the Vatican and Hollywood, of course, it's all part of the game where one or few control the many.
Right, Kevin, you've answered all of the questions that I wanted to present to you. And is there anything you would like to say in conclusion to the viewers, my friend?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it has to do with, I mean, we're going to carry this on as the case develops through the summer and into the fall. We're going to be doing live stuff from Europe, which we can broadcast. And I've got to come and do that water fight with you, remember?
Yeah, absolutely.
Your wife would like me to do.
If they'll let you into England.
Oh, hell, I'll go. You know what? I'm going to go to whatever airport, and I'm going to have people with me, and people can meet me there with the cameras, and we'll all film what happens. And if they put me in Stansted immigration prison again, so be it. More publicity, right? So anyway, leading up to that, though, really urge people to go from listening to this to take action. And the way we can do that is, give you an example, in every country where there's indigenous people, we're now part of a banishment and reclamation campaign. It means you simply go in peacefully, take over these Catholic, Anglican, United churches, which you can do under international law of reparations, compensation for all the lives you've destroyed, okay? And we have a whole manual on how to do that. We're in Canada, we operate under our own republic jurisdiction, but you can do it under your own sovereign, innate, common law jurisdiction. You just need to get 3 or 4 people together and start the ball rolling. And we're adept at how to organize that. So please contact. You can literally save children's lives by doing this. And this is what I always want to impress on people. You know, it's our obligation to do that as free men and women. So Shaun has all the contact and, you know, all the contact information with Shaun, but also if you want to book me in to speak, and especially on the topic of the court case, it's going to be my focus now over the next while, notwithstanding all the threats, and I'm sure there's going to be more of them, but bring it on. I'll be sure to tape record the next one that comes. So I got caught off guard at the cemetery there this time. But yeah, contact me. We'll set up meetings in your community, and I'll be part of the sport. And I always remember Collier Clark. She was a civil rights veteran. She's dead now. She was a good friend of mine in New York City. She said, we weren't organizers. When we went into poor communities, we didn't organize people. We were the catalyst. The people have to organize themselves. They know their situation the best. They just don't have confidence in themselves, and they're afraid, and they need someone to, like a veteran in a battle does. He leads the new recruits over the top. You have to put your own body in the line and lead by example. Otherwise, nothing changes. You know, do you want real change or do you want spare change, right? You want a few pennies from the system, or do you want real change? It's up to us to take that action now. So that's the message I want to leave folks with. And until next time, right?
All right. Thank you, my friend. I will close the show, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Cheerio.
You sure will. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take care. So all of Kevin's links in the description box, folks. Please support his work. He's going to come back in 2 weeks' time, and he said that he wanted to do a whole show on the Mormons and the Vatican. We've got loads lined up for this week. So I think Ron's in tomorrow with ex-cop John Wedger for the usual Sunday night show. Then we've got Juliet Bryan, Epstein survivor, 9 a.m. on Monday. And that same day, guess who's back? One of your favorites, Gloria Masters, is back at 7 p.m. Monday, UK time. Then we have got on the next day at 8 p.m. survivor of Mother's Boyfriend, Rachel, coming on. Brilliant speaker. And then we've got Seth coming on the 24th. And he was on Soft White Underbelly. And he is a survivor as well. He's gone through absolute hell. So we've got some great guests lined up this week. And we hope to see you in some of those streams. I've been on the road for 2 days. I filmed a prison officer who got jugged. 2.5-hour podcast in Liverpool. I filmed in Birmingham today. I live streamed from a protest. It's a bit grainy, but I took my GoPro with me. So I do have a high definition version that is probably coming out in the next day or two. So don't struggle through that grainy version. Wait for this better version to come out. All right, folks.